I want to like keep it under my pillow and like sleep with it. I cried so hard that I felt like I popped a rib out of place. Hey guys, welcome back. I'm Skylar. I've got my February wrap up today, so I will just hop right into it. In February, I read 12 books across 5,176 pages. 9 of them were ebooks, 1 was a physical book, and 2 were audiobooks. 58.3% was YA, and 41.7% was adult. 5 of them I got from the library, 2 were ones that I bought, and 2 were advanced reader copies. A lot of the books that I read this month were so long. Most of them were over 500, 600 pages. Okay, the first book I read was Illuminae by Amy Kaufman and Jay Kristoff. I basically went into the book knowing nothing about it. I just had seen it so many different times and it was so hyped up. I didn't really have any expectations because a lot of the time when something is way overhyped, I know that it might not live up to the hype, but this one absolutely lived up to the hype for me. I loved basically everything about it. I thought it was so unique, especially the way they had gathered all the information. And so it is a young adult science fiction novel where these 2 characters end up on separate spaceships and their fleet of ships is on the run from an enemy fleet basically that just destroyed their planet. And so the story is mainly told through like these instant messaging logs and files and things like that, which I was not expecting it to be as engaging as it was. There is a little bit of separation between yourself and the characters because you are literally watching through the eyes of like cameras and analysts and chat logs, but it was so good, especially with the artificial intelligence basically raising questions about morality and going through its own growth. It was so cool. There were so many different aspects to it that were really enjoyable. And I thought the main character, Katie, was amazing. I literally loved her. Like, she's like the heroine I want in a book. Like, determined, smart, she is not afraid to do what needs to be done. Oh, another thing is that all of the science was sound. I think a lot of people go into science fiction and they just kind of make up their own science, but the authors consulted with astrophysicists and doctors and for like the pandemic stuff and all of the science was accurate for space, so it was really cool, really neat, unique, and I loved it. Okay, the next book I read was Kingsbane, which is the second book in the Furyborn trilogy by Claire Legrand. It was a reread for me because you guys have probably heard me talk about Lightbringer before, but I had been waiting for Lightbringer to come out for so long that when I finally got my hands on it, I really could not bring myself to conclude the series. And so I ended up putting it off for a while. And then when my friend Mare Reads was reading through the series and she was on Kingsbane, I was like, wait, like we can read Lightbringer together. And hearing her talk about Kingsbane made me want to read it all over again because it was probably my favorite book I read last year. So I ended up just picking it up and doing a reread, and I'm really glad I did because it's just such an emotional roller coaster. It really just gets me. Like, it is one of my favorite series of all time. I am still emotionally destroyed from Kingsbane. Like, forever, that book will just, I don't even have words. So even though that was a reread, I gave it 5 stars. And if you don't know the plot of the Imperium trilogy, it's about 2 queens, one of blood and one of light. There's a prophecy that basically says one will be the world's redemption and one will be the world's ruination. If that's a word. And they are 1,000 years apart, so you are going back and forth between their 2 point of views, but they are very closely connected, and you find out why later on. There are angels and gods, beasts, they're called, and just so many cool fantasy elements. But I really love the writing. I really love the characters. Riel is one of the main characters, and I think she might be my favorite protagonist of all time. I love her. I get her. I see her. She's it. She is, and there are so many characters I just adore, like Audric, Eliana, Simon, Corian. Like, somehow I just really love all of them, which I feel like in any given series, I usually end up preferring 1 or 2 characters. But in the Imperium series, I am just like in love with all the characters. So my Kingsbane reread was just as good the second time. I gave it 5 stars again. And then following that, of course, was Lightbringer. Lightbringer is one of those books that I want to like keep it under my pillow and like sleep with it in my bed. Like, I do not want to part from it. And she's stunning. Like, have you ever seen a more beautiful cover? I think the only cover I find more beautiful is Kingsbane. So of course I had huge expectations going into this because the Imperium trilogy is one of my favorite series of all time. So I was terrified. I was scared to know what was going to happen to the characters. I was scared that it was going to be over. I was scared that I wouldn't like what happened. But Miss Legrand delivered. The writing is stunning. I love the world building, the characters, and I literally loved every minute of this book. I think it might have even been better than Kingsbane, although it's really hard for me to pick. I really tried to savor this. Like, I absorbed every word. You know, like sometimes when you're reading and you're kind of going fast, sometimes you skip a word, you're just kind of skimming over the page. I did the opposite in Lightbringer, where every word, I was like absorbing every word. I would like reread some of the sentences twice just to really like let every single one sink in. And so this was another 5-star read for me. I loved every word. I loved every scene, every moment. It was like exactly what I wanted. I had a few complaints about it, but overall, I was really satisfied with how she decided to wrap up the series. But at the same time, this book destroyed me. I have never cried so hard over a book in my entire life, I think. For some reason, it's not really easy to make me cry, especially from a book. I've maybe cried over like 3 books in my life. And that's like really, really crying. I mean, I've like teared up over a lot of books where I start to feel kind of emotional, but this was like flat out sobbing. I cried so hard that like I felt like I popped a rib out of place almost. I was crying, you guys. Favorite series of all time, but if you pick this one up, buy tissues and be prepared to just never feel happiness again. Since I have read this book, I have not known peace. I have found it so hard to read anything since. So 5 stars. I want to, like, I have separation anxiety from this book. I want to, like, keep her with me. Okay, so the next book I read after that was Touch of Darkness by Scarlett St. Clair. This was a Hades and Persephone retelling. I think Mare suggested it to me, so I got it from my library. I actually really liked it. It was cool to see a modern Hades and Persephone retelling that actually kept them like who they are. They were still gods and goddesses, and it was very neat. It wasn't like the best writing. The plot was like a little bit all over the place. It was pretty enjoyable though. It got me out of my book hangover after Lightbringer. I mean, actually, I still kind of have a book hangover from Lightbringer, but it was like the first book that I felt like I could keep reading to keep moving on with my life after Lightbringer. Hades definitely gave me like recent vibes in this, and the romance was spicy. It was good. I enjoyed it, so I gave it 4 stars. Next, I finished reading Love by Toni Morrison, and I've mentioned in a few of my prior wrap-ups that I'm trying to read all of her work because I think that it's so amazing. And again, her writing is so stunning, so beautiful. Her voice, it's just everything is so good about her stories. But this one was very difficult for me to stomach. So it's about 2 women who were best friends when they were children, and one marries the other's grandfather, like when she's like 14 and he's like 50 or something like really gross. And the story is taking place tons and tons of years later when the grandfather is dead, and they're basically fighting over his hotel, like their inheritance, kind of. To me, what stood out is that I felt like it was kind of an examination of bonds between women, kind of like this sisterly best friend bond. But I ended up giving it 4 stars, even though it is difficult to get through and kind of stomach. Her writing and her voice and everything is just so amazing, and her storytelling is so powerful. So I would definitely recommend this, but with the content warning. Okay, next I read Gemina by Amy Kaufman and Jay Kristoff, which is the sequel to Illuminae. I was very, very excited to pick this one up because obviously I was just like in love with the characters and the story from the first book. Right off the bat, I was a little bit disappointed because we are kind of with new characters, and I was so attached to Katie and Ezra. I wanted it to just be just them the whole time. So I was a bit hesitant at first, but as the story continued, I started to get into it and get a little bit more attached to the characters and the story. By the end, I was kind of almost like mind blown by some of the plot points. I thought it was so cool. I love space and quantum physics. It's just like such a unique series. So I gave this one 4 stars. It wasn't as good as Illuminae, but it was still really good. Okay, after that I read Heartstopper volumes 1 through 3, which several people have suggested to me, but I finally picked it up because of Katie at Katie Can't Read, so go check out her channel. She loves Alice Oseman so much. I was just like, you know what, I need something light and fluffy. All of the books that I've been reading have just been like destroying me. Heartstopper is about 2 boys in high school. One is a rugby player and the other one kind of starts to notice him and starts to like him, and he ends up joining the rugby team and they end up falling for each other, and it is just so sweet and cute and fluffy, and it's really easy to read in a single sitting because you can just keep going. It's like, okay, one more one more chapter, one more episode. So I think I gave them all 5 or 4 stars. They're all really cute. Okay, after that I read The Gravity Inside Us by Chloe Frayne, which was an ARC. And it is a book of poetry. I don't know, I don't read as much poetry as I used to. I used to read a ton of poetry. So this I ended up giving 3 stars. I feel like I would maybe suggest it to somebody who is in high school or going through like their first heartbreak or like their first breakup. It felt very much like someone who is going through a breakup for the first time and that's all they can think about. It got a little bit tiring. Like in the middle, I kind of wanted poems that were about different subjects. It seemed like every poem was like her talking in second person, like to the person that broke her heart. But some of them were very nice, so I gave it 3 stars. Okay, next I read A Court of Silver Flames by Sarah J. Maas. You guys, this was 768 pages of like nothing. And whenever I pick up a Sarah J. Maas book, I already know that her writing is just not really my favorite style. It's very easy and quick to get through, but I basically just read them because they are fun escapism. So again, I didn't go into this with very high expectations, especially since I felt like the ACOTAR series was nicely wrapped up and it was done. And I do not like Nesta. I've never liked Nesta. I understand that she has trauma and she has PTSD, but so do every single one of the other characters. And they are not as mean as she is. And I don't know, I love characters that are like headstrong and fiery. Like Riel from Furyborn, for example. Riel and Eliana both, they are badass, both of them. But Nesta just comes off as like mean for the sake of being mean. But I really like Cassian and I liked all the other books. I've definitely gone into Sarah J. Maas books before thinking that I wouldn't like them, like Empire of Storms. I hate Chaol, so I thought I was gonna hate that book, but I ended up liking it because the plot was fun and there were other good characters, and so I tried to go into it with an open mind. I was like, you know what, maybe I'll love Nesta by the end. I don't think I will, but maybe I will. Maybe the plot will just be fun escapism. Unfortunately, I didn't feel like there was any plot. Every time something interesting happened, it was resolved so quickly. It was like she just wanted to get back to the smut scenes as quickly as possible. The main plot is basically that Nesta is being forced by the inner circle to clean up her act, so to speak, and try to start healing herself in some way. So they decide that she needs to train with Cassian and she needs to work in the library with the priestesses. I mean, I've seen a lot of criticism about people saying that they should not have forced Nesta to do anything, and I kind of agree, but I think it's just obvious that Sarah just needed to come up with a plot that would allow Nesta and Cassian to spend a lot of time together and be alone together in the House of Wind. So what we got was basically 768 pages of Nesta training over and over again. And then Cassian and Nesta smut scenes that didn't really go anywhere. And I was kind of hoping that we would get some kind of romance. Like, I wanted to see good chemistry between them. I think I would have been more invested in the book if there was chemistry between them. But I just didn't see that. I didn't feel that. There was not really any romance going on. There was just smut scenes. That's cool, like if you like that too, but I'm just not sure why the book was 768 pages. In a lot of her other books, like the plot ends up being fun and exciting, and it just wasn't there in this book. Basically, this book just didn't do it for me. I still don't like Nesta. I understand where she's coming from and her trauma and her PTSD, but I feel like that almost wasn't even totally explored. Like, there is a scene that she basically is assaulted and traumatized all over again, but then she doesn't even like talk about it again for the rest of the book. Like, it happens and then she's just like over it. Like, she doesn't think about it again, she doesn't talk about it again, and I didn't really understand that. It was just like, oh, back to smut scene. Yeah, by the end, I didn't even really feel like I saw that much growth from her. Like, yeah, okay, now she has trained to become like a warrior. Now she has abs and she can kill people. I don't know. I gave it 1 star. I just didn't enjoy anything about it. I was so sorry. After that, I read Where Hope Comes From by Nikita Gill, and her poetry is really beautiful, really lovely. She has this knack for cultivating a really good balance between vulnerability and strength. And so I really like her poetry, and I like that a lot of it is about like magic and constellations and stars, and it's just very pretty. So I gave that one 4 stars. Anyways, thank you for watching. Leave me a comment below. Let me know what you thought about any of the books I mentioned, and I will see you guys next time. Bye!